Live Interactive English. Hello, everyone. I am Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And here we are with part 2 of this month's story. It's a Greek myth from ancient Greece. It is the story of Echo, and Narcissus. I'm so handsome.
Yes.
That's kind of the characters.
It
right?
is.
So far.
And we did say that these words might look kind of familiar. And of course, I think echo might be slightly more recognizable as when you shout and the sound can bounce back, that is an echo. But Narcissus, you might not catch where does this come from, but it comes from the word...
Well, we get the word narcissistic.
Oh yeah, narcissist or narcissism, narcissistic. All of those come from the character Narcissus.
Someone who thinks they're really, really attractive and spends a lot of time talking about how beautiful or handsome or gorgeous they are. Someone who's always looking in the sun. Oh, look at my skin. It's so wonderful. You're like, oh, you're such a narcissist. Stop staring at yourself in the mirror, taking selfies of yourself. Get over yourself, we might say to that person. Yes. And you're right, an echo is it's a real thing. I mean, it's funny to say an echo is a real thing. You can't touch it, but you can hear it. It's when sound bounces back and you hear your own voice or you hear that sound repeated again and again. That's an echo.
Yes, and so we have this kind of phenomenon in English a lot where we kind of grab words from all kinds of different older languages, and they kind of, some of them are not even older. Sometimes we just grab words from French and all these different languages. But English likes to pull them all from these different sources and throw them all together, and that's why you as an English learner might have trouble pronouncing things because sometimes those words don't come from the same source. And so they might look, oh, this looks like it's spelled the same way. Oh, but this one is French and this one is from German or something like that. And so their pronunciations are totally different. So English is kind of a funny language as far as that goes. It pulls a lot from different languages like ancient Greece, ancient Greek, all these different stories, and those languages have kind of passed down and they're still in English today.
Very true. And of course, it's not just the words, right? Ancient Greece is sort of what we call the cradle of Western civilization. Democracy comes from there. Philosophy comes from there. And of course, many of the names and words that we use today have their roots right back to ancient Greece, which is why reading these myths can be both entertaining and educational. And as we get into part 2 today, we're going to meet another character who has a name that is also a word in modern English. So let's get to it. Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, was angered by how Narcissus had treated Echo. One day, she led him to a clear pond in the woods. When he bent down to take a drink, he saw his reflection in the still water. Not knowing it was his own visage, he fell in love with the face he saw there. He stared for hours and couldn't bring himself to eat or drink.
All right, so today is part 2 of Echo and Narcissus. And as we saw in part 1, we kind of found out what happened to Echo. She has now disappeared and she has turned into just a voice. And she's kind of gone from everything. And that kind of made some people mad because, again, in Greek mythology, everybody kind of knows everybody.
That's
true. So if
true.
something happens to one person, it'll probably make somebody else not so happy.
And like in politics today, the gods often, are competing against each other. And if they can hurt the other god by helping someone else, this is the kind of thing they really love to do. So a lot of these stories are kind of like soap operas or things like that. Let's meet another character with another name with too many S's in it. Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, was angered by how Narcissus had treated Echo. I love the Greeks. They have a goddess of revenge. Revenge is something that most religions today would kind of say, oh, that's not so good. Don't look for revenge. look to, forgive the person, try to be better than getting revenge. But we are all humans, and the Greeks, even, 3,000 years ago, they understood this. Revenge is when you get back at someone who has hurt you. They have done something to hurt you. They have insulted you or laughed at you or taken something you want. And instead of forgiving them and just being like, it's okay, I don't want to fight about this. No, you're going to fight about this. Maybe you're not even going to fight. You're going to plan a way to get them back in the future when they don't expect it. So that's revenge. Someone hurts you, you want to hurt them back. What you do, and when you do that, hurting back is your revenge. So here's James. James sought revenge for his sister's murder. Okay, I could understand James maybe wanting revenge there, but that's why we have the police, and that's why we have laws and courts and things like that. We don't want people running around getting revenge on each other. So here's Nemesis. Nemesis probably isn't a fan of Hera, and Nemesis is saying, hey, I'm going to try to help these two because Hera doesn't like them.
Yes, and so now we're back with Narcissus at the pond, and so it says, one day she is Nemesis, she led him, Narcissus, to a clear pond in the woods.
She's just being nice.
Oh, here's a beautiful place to go
he's Narcissus?
swim.
Oh, I didn't know. I just want to be nice.
Yes, but when Narcissus, when he bent down to take a drink, he saw his reflection in the still water. Now, something that we didn't really talk so much about, but touched on it a little bit, is like everybody falls in love with him when they look at him. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Everybody falls in love with him.
He's very handsome.
Yes, and so we had this word reflection, and reflection is just when light bounces off of something and is not absorbed by that thing, so you can see whatever it is reflected back at you. For example, you look in a mirror and you can see your face and everything because the light is not absorbed by the mirror, it is bounced back. Now that would be the same thing if you look in kind of still water. The light will bounce back and you can see whatever it is reflected back at you. And we have our example sentence that says, I looked at my reflection in a mirror to make sure my hair was neat.
There you go. Yes, you want to look your nicest, so you look in something. Your reflection will tell you how great or not so great you look today. Not knowing it was his own visage, he fell in love with the face he saw there. Man, this guy is a narcissist, but we should know from his name. So he looked into the reflection in the water. Who is that guy? He's so handsome. He fell in love with his own visage, in other words, his face. He stared for hours and couldn't bring himself to eat or drink. Oh my gosh. So he is really in love with himself. He is he's like Timothy Chalamet times 10,000. And how can he not fall in love with him? Oh my. Have you seen his cheekbones and his eyes and his hair? Oh, wow. Yeah, he is really good looking. So good looking that he loves himself. And as we said there, his visage is his face. Actually, we're going to throw in a free word there. That's the French word for face. Visage.
See? So another word from another language that you won't know how to pronounce necessarily.
Okay, so we got a guy in a forest looking in a lake in love with himself.
Not eating, not drinking.
Not eating and not drinking, and a couple of gods rubbing their hands together going, this is going to be great. We're going to have to find out how great or not so great it is for the real people. Probably not so great.
Probably not.
After the break.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要继续来看 Echo and Narcissus 的故事。那么接着登场的是复仇女神 Nemesis 涅墨西斯。那补充一下 ，Nemesis 这个字当名词啊，它可以指劲敌、报应或者是应得的惩罚。好，那这个复仇女神就对 Narcissus 对待 Echo 的方式感到愤怒。所以有一天呢，他就引领 Narcissus 来到树林里一处清澈的池塘边。当 Narcissus 他弯着身子要喝一口水的时候，他在平静的水中看见自己的倒影，可是他不知道那是自己的脸，他爱上了那一张脸，盯着看了好几个小时都没办法吃东西或喝水。 我们在前一天故事提到说，她因为非常俊美，很多看到她的人都会爱上她。那现在连她自己也不例外。好，我们看单字 revenge。Revenge 这个名词，它表示报仇、报复，它是不可数名词。我们学一个片语是 get back at somebody， 也可以表达报复某人。再看到 reflection， 它可以指水中的倒影，或者是镜子当中的印象，也可以表达反射的意思。而补充单字 visage， 它是指脸庞或是容貌。那我们接滑课文中。
The longer Narcissus spent gazing at the water, the weaker he grew. He wished to touch the face in the pond, but every time he reached for it, the water rippled and the face disappeared. Heartbroken, Narcissus was unable to pull himself away. Eventually, he faded too. The only trace of him was a beautiful yellow and white flower near the water.The story of Echo and Narcissus lives on to warn about the dangers of loving oneself or someone else to the point of obsession. To this day, the flower named Narcissus grows by ponds and streams. Also, if you listen closely in woods or caves, you might still hear Echo's voice repeating the words of others.Okay, so we are back. We're in the forest. There's Narcissus, so handsome, staring at himself in the water, looking at that so handsome guy. That's him. And Nemesis has planned all of this. Now, what is her plan? What is going to happen here?
I don't know, but something's going to happen to Narcissus because he still is not eating or drinking. Right. He's not moving. He's just so in love with this face.
Staring at himself. Okay.
Yes.
Good thing he didn't have a cell phone.
Oh
my God.
then he'd look like most of the people here walking around like this.
You know.
But anyway, back onto the story. It says, the longer Narcissus spent gazing at the water, the weaker he grew.
Oh, I'm so skinny now. You can really see my cheekbones because I haven't eaten in months.
He wished to touch the face in the pond, but every time he reached for it, the water rippled and the face disappeared. Which of course makes sense because what happens if you touch water, where you touch will form a ripple and it will kind of bounce out from that spot and usually in circles and kind of go like this. And then you can't see the face reflected because the surface of the water has been broken.
Exactly
right.
Oh,
where'd he go? He left. Oh, he's back again.
There you go. Little ripples like waves. These are like very small waves. And yes, he can't see himself. And when that happens, oh no, he gets all upset. Heartbroken. It says Narcissus was unable to pull himself away. If he touches the water, it goes away. And of course, if he leaves the pond, if he leaves the lake, he can't see himself in the water. So he is unable to pull himself away. He can't stop looking at himself. He can't leave this place. And so what happens? Well, if you stay in the forest looking at yourself in the water and don't eat or sleep or do anything, you'll die. Well, eventually it says he faded too. Oh, since this is Greek myths and these are gods and things like that, he doesn't die, but he does fade away. His body slowly just disappears over time, just like Echo did, leaving only her voice. But what did Narcissus leave behind? It says the only trace of him was a beautiful yellow and white flower near the water. And I can kind of imagine the flower sort of bending over to sort of almost look at itself in the water, just like Narcissus did. It says eventually, yes, this is what happened. Remember, we talked about him fading over time. When something happens over time, it happens eventually. So it doesn't happen right away. It does happen, but when we use the word eventually, we get the idea that some time passed. Could be minutes, could be hours, days, months, weeks, but the idea is that we had to be patient, we had to wait. Things didn't happen just like that. They happened after some time had passed. For example, it took a long time, but eventually we arrived at the hotel. We expected it to take 10 or 15 minutes. It took an hour, something like that.
Yes, and so then to conclude our story, it says, The story of Echo and Narcissus lives on to warn about the dangers of loving oneself or someone else to the point of obsession. So, okay, you don't want to be so obsessed with yourself or someone else that you can't accept maybe a no, or you can't accept moving your face away from the mirror to go do something else. And so this is something that is meant to warn us. And warn is a verb, and it just means to kind of tell us that something could be trouble. So give us a heads up, give us a warning, let us know that something is not okay or not good for us, or something is coming. There could be something, you might warn that a tornado is coming. You get a tornado warning that says this is on its way so that you can be prepared. So a lot of Greek stories, they tell us these kinds of morals and things like that to teach us something about how we should act as people. And in our example sentence, it says, my mother always warned me not to talk to strangers. So you need to be careful. Don't talk to strangers. Be safe. So that was a warning.
Sure.
Told you to be careful of this thing.
Don't talk to the strangers, but you can call their car and get in the car and drive places.
Yes.
That's weird.
As long as it's on an app.
As long as it's on an app. To this day, it says, so even now, thousands of years after the Greeks invented this story, to this day, the flower named Narcissus, which is a beautiful yellow and white flower, the flower named Narcissus grows by ponds and streams. If you want to plant some narcissuses in your garden, you can. Also, if you listen closely in woods or caves, you might still hear Echo's voice, repeating the words of others, because she has faded away, but her voice and her warning are still with us today.
Yes.
I like that story.
Yes, it is. And so we have this what do you think? So we have a what do you think question. And it says, do you think that Narcissus deserved what happened to him? Well, for me, I think if I just take the story as we read it right now, I would say no, because all he did was say, no, please don't touch me. And that made everybody mad. But I know it's a Greek story, and I'm sure there are way more details because Greek mythology is very complicated. So I'm sure he actually probably did something that really did deserve this. But in just this story, I would say, no, it's okay to tell somebody, no, I don't want you caressing me. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to stare at the lake and disappear.
That's definitely true. But I would also say that since he's in a Greek myth, Narcissus should expect something bad to happen to him because he's not a god. He's a normal person. It's like if you're in a James Bond movie, you should expect to be beaten up by James Bond. That's just what's going to happen. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here sometime very soon. Until then, take care of yourselves, but not too much. You know, love yourselves, but don't go crazy about it. And we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye.
Narcissus 盯着水面越久，他就变得越虚弱。他想要摸摸池塘里那一张脸，可是每当他伸手去摸，水就会起涟漪，那张脸就消失了。Narcissus 感到心碎，无法自拔，最后他也消逝了。唯一留下的踪迹就是水边一朵黄白色美丽的花。好，来看单字 eventually， 它就是表达最后、最终，它是个副词。那课文接着提到说 ，Echo and Narcissus 的故事呢，流传下来，告诫世人爱自己或别人到走火入魔的危险。那这边用到动词 warn， 它就是表达警告或者是提醒、告诫。Warn about something 就是告诫什么什么。那它的名词在后面加上 ing，warning 就是表达警示、警告或是警惕。而刚刚 Sam 老师他有用到 heads up 这个名词，则是表达提醒、警告某事将发生。我们可以用 give somebody a heads up 来表达。补充单字 obsession， 它是指痴迷或是迷恋。那它的动词 obsess 就可以表达使着迷的意思。那这边3个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看第一个重点是双重比较级。双重比较级是用来表达两种情况之间的消长关系，也就是越怎么样就越怎么样。那句型是 the 比较级主词加动词，逗号 the 比较级主词加动词。这个比较级可以是形容词比较级、 副词比较级，或者是用 more 或 fewer 去加可数名词，也可以用 more 或是 less 来加不可数名词。那我们造2个例句。The earlier you start saving, the sooner you can reach your goals. 你越早开始存钱，就能越快达成目标。The more cream you add, the thicker your soup will be. 你加越多的鲜奶油，汤就会越浓稠。那补充一下，在这个句型当中，动词是 be 动词的话，时常会省略。那主词如果没有指特定对象的时候，也可以连同 be 动词一起省略。像 the higher the price, the better the quality， 意思就是价格越高，品质越好，或是 the sooner the better， 就是越快越好。第2个重点 spend 这个动词呢，它可以指花费，像花费时间啊、精力或金钱。那么主动的时候呢，常常会用人当主词。句型就是 somebody spend 时间、精力或金钱加上动词 ing， 或者是也可以加上 on 加名词。例如I spent an hour cleaning up my room. 我花了1个小时打扫房间。看到第3个重点 gaze， 它当不及物动词是指凝视、注视，我们常用 gaze at 加名词来表达。例如 They gazed at each other without saying a word. 他们不发一语的凝视着彼此。好啦，那么以上这些讲解，同学们别走开，马上回来哦。
Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, was angered by how Narcissus had treated Echo. One day, she led him to a clear pond in the woods. When he bent down to take a drink, he saw his reflection in the still water. Not knowing it was his own visage, he fell in love with the face he saw there. He stared for hours and couldn't bring himself to eat or drink. The longer Narcissus spent gazing at the water, the weaker he grew. He wished to touch the face in the pond, but every time he reached for it, the water rippled and the face disappeared. Heartbroken, Narcissus was unable to pull himself away. Eventually, he faded too. The only trace of him was a beautiful yellow and white flower near the water. The story of Echo and Narcissus lives on to warn about the dangers of loving oneself or someone else to the point of obsession. To this day, the flower named Narcissus grows by ponds and streams. Also, if you listen closely in woods or caves, you might still hear Echo's voice repeating the words of others.
Hey, it's KiWi on the street.
I'm Kiki.
And I'm Winnie.
Winnie, guess what? Yesterday, I wanted a cookie, so I tried to reach for the cookie jar, but I couldn't get it because it was so high up. I just couldn't reach it.
You're saying the cookie jar was like poor, it had no money or something?
What? No, I tried to grab it because it was high, so I tried to reach it.
Kiki, you mean reach, not rich. Those are 2 different words.
Oh, that's right. Looks like it's time to work on some pronunciation. It's time to work on some pronunciation. All right, can you please read this sentence for me?
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. Very good. What about this?
I can hardly breathe.
I can hardly breathe. I can hardly breathe.
Nice. What did we learn today?
Okay, let's work on some pronunciations. Today we are focusing on the words breath and breathe. One is a noun and the other is a verb. So first up, we have take a deep breath. When we look at the word breath, we don't want to say the E-A-T like the word eat. We want to say it with a eh sound, like you're exhaling. So we have to say take a deep breath. And why is that important? Because the next word is breathe. I can hardly breathe. Here is a hint on how to pronounce the word breathe. You'll see an E at the end. This also lets us know that this is the verb, to breathe. Then we want to make that E-E sound. I can hardly breathe. That's all we have for today. KiWi later.